Hellboy? Oh boy, where to start? I suppose with broken promises. Remember how Mike Mignola built this up as a new dawn for his comic book creation, and how excited we were that Neil Marshall, helmer of some of our favorite Game of Thrones episodes, had finally gotten a big Hollywood blockbuster to direct. Remember that? Etc., etc. So many promises were made with this movie. And on a side note, when it comes to Neil Marshall, recently when we were discussing what happened to Kevin Tsujihara over at Warner Brothers, one of the interesting developments was that basically all these like good old boys kind of hang out together, and Neil Marshall kind of met Charlotte Kirk through all of them, and she was supposed to maybe be in this movie, but the producer was like, no way in hell. But Neil Marshall kind of like got pulled away with her siren song, so to speak. And so part of me did wonder while I was watching this movie if that might be one of the reasons that it does not live up to the promise that one would think would be with a Neil Marshall feature film. I was saying you should get a movie for so long, Neil Marshall, and now this is what you deliver? I hope that it is Charlotte Kirk that has led him astray, and not the lack of his abilities. But anyway, in reality, this film is a perfect fit with Millennium's other mediocre movies. It fits right in the box set, and plays more like a Hellboy streaming show, working to appeal to hardcore fans of the comic rather than elevate the material. Now, if you're a hardcore fan of Hellboy, you might be like, why the heck does the material need to be elevated, Grace? Well, here's the thing. Guillermo del Toro already made arguably two great, if not perfect, Hellboy movies, right? So what's the point of a refresh in front of and behind the camera if you're not going to refresh the material as well? This movie, it was originally set up to be a third entry in the franchise instead of a reboot, and it often feels like that's what it is, just a third film. In fact, I really do feel it's a streaming service. A streaming show is the best way to describe this. It feels like you're watching a bunch of those episodes together in a theater, but that's really what happened to the Hellboy franchise. It went to Amazon or Netflix or something like that. Now, Hellboy, also I want to point out, has never enjoyed the same level of popularity as other comic book characters, even after his movies came out. So even if you were to, that's the other thing that's weird. Even if you were to make a great Hellboy streaming show, you'd have to wonder, what's the point? Because not that many people are into Hellboy. I mean, unless you tried to broaden his appeal, and do something more with the character. Because clearly, it has not reached a wide audience. So the only way that it could isn't if you can't ram more of the same thing down, try and ram more of the same thing down everybody's throat. You need to add a new spin to it. And this is really, really just the same old, same old. So you'd have to really love Hellboy or movies like Resident Evil or Underworld to make this worth your time. Although I do want to say another thing. During the press screening, I hesitate to bring this up. It happens occasionally, and often during movies like this, because I talked about it with one of Vin Diesel's recent movies. But someone next to me, this guy, just wouldn't stop laughing at the movie. And in fact, at the end, there was supposed to be this touching scene, which I thought they were kind of making work. And he just was he not only laughed like a involuntary laugh, so it's okay, fine, you think this is amusing, whatever. He was doing a prolonged laughter, he's just gonna laugh through the whole scene. So I actually had to turn and look at him, and he eventually, after a few moments, noticed that I was doing that and stopped. I just think it's really disrespectful because the movie is trying hard, and the movie, I think, does have some really good elements to it. It's just not enough, but I don't think it deserves to be laughed at. So good luck in your own screening. If you think you're sitting next to any laughers, you might want to move before the movie starts. And if you really do love Hellboy, and even I was impressed by this, even though I'm not a big Hellboy fan, you'll be thrilled with the one promise that the movie does keep, and that's its R rating. This movie is so disgusting. It's not only tough to watch, but it's tough to eat. I regretted my snacks. I don't think there's any snack that would be safe. And it's right away, I was like, this is not good. And then in the third act, when demons walk the streets of London, not a spoiler because it was in the trailers, but I actually had to look away several times because what was on screen was just, in my opinion, too horrible to watch. I was like, I can't look. But to be fair, I think that's how it would be in hell for real, right? You'd be like, that's too horrible. I can't look. So it was realistic hellish demons, but I just didn't appreciate being there. Okay, so anyway, well, I not appreciate, I just didn't, it's not my thing, but it was well done for those of you who were like, yes, show me more. They very creatively came up with ways that demons would kill humans, and I was just too much for me personally. But to its credit, also to the film's credit, in addition to that R rating, the film has two standout performances. The first is David Harbour, who is Hellboy. A character actor who's been on the sidelines in Hollywood for decades, only now coming to the forefront thanks to Stranger Things. Well, he proves he can handle the lead role. He's not even really the lead in Stranger Things, but here he's definitely the lead, and he has great line delivery throughout, even in the most trying of circumstances. He can do the humor, he can do the pathos. He is the one element here that I think does kind of rise above the material. He's fantastic. I also really love the Baba Yaga scene. And while David Harbour rises above the material, but the Baba Yaga scene gets down to the disgusting mud with it and rolls around. This scene was so horribly disgusting that I have mad respect for it. Like, they actually feature her eating kids and the corpses of kids in her kitchen. And, you know, the reason I didn't have a problem with that is because I was like, well, that's what Baba Yaga does. Let this be a lesson to you. Don't talk to strangers. And the movie just was, the scene was so well done and just so went for it and was so organic. It earned it. You can go there if you earn it. And I felt this scene did. It was, if you like this kind of stuff, it's almost, I would say, a must-see. Now, Dae Kim, there was a lot of, Ed Skrein gave up his role so that they could cast an actor who matches the ethnicity of the character in the comics. So Dae Kim got the role. His British accent, impeccable. But his role is boring. It's not much of a role. And the VFX on his were-cheetah are way too 90s. And also, how does he keep getting his clothes back on? And at the end of the film, like his full clothing, like layers. I mean, at least Titans dares to answer these important questions. Sasha Lane, this is the role that apparently Charlotte Kirk wanted. Sasha Lane, very appealing as Alice. I enjoyed her backstory quite a bit. Very TV-like, though, very streaming show-like. And she is revealed to have some cool tricks up her sleeve, power-wise. And her VFX are quite well done in contrast to Dae Kim's. But ultimately, her role is also just very 90s, and that it's a female ingenue sidekick. I've just seen it so many times before. And speaking of seeing things before, Ian McShane has played this type of role countless times at this point, but he's so damn good at it. I don't get tired of it. He's very good here as well, and I did feel his father-son bond with Harbour thanks to both of their work in the film. Milla Jovovich looks great as Nimue, our villain, and takes her role very seriously, which does a lot to help sell it. And in fact, I think that everyone in this movie, as I said, takes it very seriously, which I appreciated. But you know what? Perhaps too seriously. Perhaps they're too slavish to the source material, because this really does feel like a streaming series, and while a pretty well done one at that, the material is just too stale at this point. Not only in that we've already seen Hellboy in live action, but also this type of story just in general is all over the place now. Not only in terms of comics, but also the Hell setting. Like, it actually reminded me and had a lot of similarities to Netflix's Sabrina, which is currently streaming and I just recently finished. It's too much of the same. So yes, in a world this is an interesting problem to have suddenly. So in a world flush with comic book adaptations, faithful ain't enough. You gotta also work harder and smarter. And I think be more ambitious. This is just not ambitious enough. So that's my review of Hellboy. I'd be very curious to hear what you think about it down below. If you're going to have spoiler comments, please mark them as such. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.